It's first of all, it's an ever evolving problem. But I keep on hearing about the consistency, right? I thought the secret was in the special format, or the secret was in the hype that you can create about the topic. Then I thought the secret is in the guest. But then, I mean, the secret is in all of these elements.
Of course, absolutely.
But everybody keeps on saying is the consistency that helps. And I think what you also gain, if we talk about the personal growth, when you become consistent, when you take it as a job, and when your stakes are high in terms of what you want to achieve, you take it same as you hiring yourself for your own show, eventually it fine-tunes the conversation too.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of I Hope It Helps. And my guest on the show today is Miss Lara Varlamova. Lara, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Khaled, and thanks for inviting me. I mean, it's not really typical for me to be a guest.
I know.
I'm just trying to, but it's a good experience for sure.
No,
yeah.
It's funny you say that. I relate to that a lot. When you're a host of a show and you get invited to another show, it's hard to get out of host mode because you're listening to the other person speak and you're like already starting to plan like the next question. Where do you want to take the conversation? It's hard to just like let go and be the responder.
Tell me about that.
So Lara, thanks so much for your time and for coming on the show today. So guys, for the people who don't know, Lara is a fantastic podcaster. Honestly, I've listened to a couple of your episodes and I really appreciate the way you ask your questions and guide the conversation. I think you have quite a unique approach. I found them very valuable. You seem to ask the questions that even I was thinking about. I'm like, oh, thank God she asked that question because I was curious about it. So I want to talk to you today about, first of all, I know you've been in B2B marketing for over 12 years. So I'd love to understand your experience in that field. How did we get into podcasting? How do you end up here in podcasting? And a couple of other things. But before we get into everything, Lara, why don't you give all of us a little bit of background about yourself and we'll take it from there.
Thank you so much. First of all, your feedback about the episodes that I recorded very valuable. You know, we all are in a position like we do want to get our content consumed, but I also realize that we're living in a region where we're just at the beginning of the journey and that we have to like really raise our standards high to be able to record a good content. So any feedback from anybody is really, really appreciated because that will prompt us to make a better job, right?
Absolutely.
Plus, that's what I want to, we're competing like globally when we're recording English.
Yes.
We're competing with like a lot of absolutely amazing content. So any feedback like that is really valuable. So thank you for sharing that. I am actually, so in terms of the background, we can split, I think, this into two parts of my life.
Okay.
So the first part, I was a corporate employee for about, I think overall, it was about, 15 years probably.
Okay.
8 to 9 years out of them were properly corporate job here in Dubai at IBM Middle East. I did several roles, including small roles, bigger roles. And then, as it happens to be in Dubai, my job was structure-wise, was removed from the structure, and I couldn't sort of match the next job position. So I tried setting up my own marketing business because my last role was in marketing, and I felt like I do have the knowledge and I do have the understanding of the bigger picture. So I started trying to build my own marketing service business, and I quickly realized that it's not as easy in Dubai because big marketing agencies apparently are sort of controlling the game, and the smaller ones to be sustainable, so you just need to find, let's put it this way, the right model. So I decided to find a way how I can differentiate myself from anything that was in the market at that point of time. And since my presence on LinkedIn at that time was quite active, and looking for a job was not the most exciting exercise. I was looking for something that will keep me exciting. And somehow, somewhere, just because algorithms are magic, they sort of they connected me to Vuk.
Okay.
Vuk from Podster, right?
Shout out Vuk.
Yeah, and my first ever thought I had in my mind, I was like, okay, this guy is doing something cool, honestly, because he was wearing, the headphones and stuff. And he was doing like a mic and everything. I thought it looks so trendy and it's local. And I sent him a message. I'm like, Vuk, hi, can we connect what you're doing? Can I check out, what you're doing? Can I help? Etc., etc. And gradually, I think Vuk was also pretty much at the start of his journey in podcasting business. So I think I just managed to meet him at the right time, right? And I got into that journey. Started recording my first sort of episodes about marketing. I mean, looking back, probably they look very awkward, but I mean, that process kept me very excited. Right? It also brought up a lot of topics that were on my mind. And yeah, I evolved, let's put it this way, into a podcasting business together with Vuk, because he, at some point of time, when he decided to expand the business, he invited me to become one of the investors. So I came on board to Podster. So
Okay.
yeah. So that is that close to me. But I mean, that is a different thing. So Veela Podcast, or the podcast that I'm developing now, is currently a project that is my creative part of me, where I really implement everything I've ever learned about B2B, be it marketing or different other areas of business. And I realized that I really love exploring new trends that are disrupting all the areas of business. And that's how the conversation builds, actually. Yeah.
Okay. First of all, very, very interesting. I didn't know until I was doing my research that you were you've been a part of Podster almost pretty much since like the early days, because it's been like 3-4 years now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. So when you joined Vuk, because it said B2B marketing, I guess.
Yeah,
so
that's the
what
first.
was the role, I guess, you were playing in Podster?
No. I didn't work at Podster ever. But I was one of the first content creators that got actually so excited about the idea of the interview.
Gotcha.
And I kept on like interviewing everybody, like Vuk, Ivan, everybody who was at Podster, and just plus my former colleagues from IBM. A few of them came on my show. That conversation was really deep. I mean, that was something interesting and valuable that we started to share. But since then, I think I was trying to also look for the ways how to make the B2B content exciting. Not just as it is, but bring in something that will attract people's attention to very, very important conversations that we need to have on the regional level.
Sure.
And that's how my, let's put it, show evolved. That's how we evolved. For now, I've got 50 episodes recorded, all of them about different areas of companies, be it a small business or a bigger structure, be it leadership, marketing, media, functions, organizations, budgets, roles, and also the subject I'm very much interested in is the personal growth, because you always need to have a certain set of skills and the personality traits that allow you to sort of change things, understand the trends, and to sort of, change the niches and evolve together with the world.
Yeah.
Because it's different, right? Than it used to be like 100%. A decade ago.
100%. I love that you touched on the personal growth part, and the reason is so that's an area I'm incredibly passionate about as well. I'm the kind of person who I'm trying to improve every day. I have a whole routine and so on. Anyway, I've probably said it on enough podcasts now. So I was working today with a coach of mine, and we were going through like my podcast and like the positioning and like the business and so on. And we kind of landed on the personal growth part, and we're like, the message I'm trying to give out, or what I'm trying to do with my podcast, I realize is it for it to be an educational platform. It's kind of free knowledge. If you're someone who's curious, who wants to improve themselves, who wants to learn just for the sake of learning, kind of like what you're doing about lots of different areas, because I believe no matter what you learn, that's a bonus. Even if it's not directly related to like marketing or what I'm doing, you never know when that learning is going to come up. And I think it broadens your mind to think of things differently and look out for new opportunities. I feel you share that same ideology.
I think especially people who get into podcasting business or getting into any media projects like yourself, for example, first of all, getting out there and conducting or having a conversation that really matters. I mean, it's just one of the first things that you're doing is like you're thinking about your personal life. What will help you to be more exciting, to be more engaging, to be more valuable in the next episode, in the next piece of content with the next guest, right? So, and it feels like it's very natural for people who are in this particular niche to always think about, I mean, being more appealing, let's say, right?
Sure.
Being more engaging. What do you need? So you need to be not just relaxed, but you need to develop yourself, right? And the whole point of building a communication with another person, I think that also requires you to always think about the personal growth.
100%. It's so interesting that you touched on the communication part, because so I've done now, I think this is episode like 120 that's together. So although I've become quite comfortable obviously as a podcast host, as an interviewer, I recently started taking a public speaking course.
Really?
Yeah, because I was like, okay, I'm good at this area.
Yeah.
However, I believe I can deliver my message or my thoughts in a more cohesive way, which kind of touches on what you're talking about, which is the communication element. I want to just backtrack a second, because you touched on it earlier about B2B marketing and B2B content. Now, you mentioned when we were just catching up on LinkedIn that you mentioned that emotional business content is an area that you're passionate about.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd love to hear from you. If you could just explain to us, what does that mean from your perspective? And I guess, what's the mindset to keep in mind when creating emotional content?
Ever since I worked in the corporate world and I had the chance to actually have a small impact on the marketing activities and marketing content, I realized that, but we're talking about many years back, right? But ever since then, I realized that the content was very much product focused, although we were doing it for the clients. And then since then, anytime I was working with another small or bigger company, I would always feel the content was always product focused. Means if I'm going to, let's say, talk about my company, my business, the most boring thing to do probably is to talk about the services themselves and about, as much as we need to sell stuff. But I always felt like we were not supposed to directly sell it with naming things like, okay, buy my piece of box or whatever, buy my beautiful donuts, or I don't know. You need to engage people in a different way, right? They need to get curious about what motivates you, for example, about what's your background story, why are you in this company, or why this company produces this particular. So basically, it's the brand is the story, and it's how this brand grew into whatever it is now, and why this company produces these specific products. Why is it important? Because there are multiple different repetitive products, repetitive brands, and the stories as well. Unless you are getting into authenticity, unless you appreciate and value your specific motivation, your specific background story, you're not going to sound different to anybody else. And that background story needs to be an emotional one, because guess what, we're all humans, and humans are built of feelings and emotions, and then emotions and feelings are actually prompt our actions.
Absolutely.
So we just need to reinvent the conversation from being product focused to get it to becoming, let's say, emotions focused, stories focused, because that relates to other humans too. And ever since a decade ago, I thought there's a different way to talk about products. And that's how, and nowadays we're in an era where video is probably one of the most leading type of content or content format. How can you be product focused in a video? I don't know how two humans can talk about things that are not emotional. So it just happened to be naturally.
Sure.
This is a natural evolvement of where the good industry is going. Plus, there's another point. We know AI, right? AI is coming into picture, and AI can generate anything.
Of course.
It's very powerful. To be able to compete with it, or not to compete, but at least to to live next to AI content, you need to demonstrate that you're a real human being.
Yeah.
How can you demonstrate that you're a real human being? You need to find a way to put those values into a special content format, be it an untold story, vulnerability, backstage. There are so many different formats how you can position that.
Yeah. One thing you said there about, I love the example you gave about between a product and emotional like content. In my head, I'm like, okay, I get exactly what Lara's talking about. Because like you said, typically in the past, it would be when you're selling something or marketing something, is like, oh, these are our features. We're better than the competitor. Buy. And this is where podcasting has kind of come at a unique time.
Massively.
Because it hits exactly what you're talking about. And this kind of moves us on to authenticity. Now, what I love about podcasts is the way I look at it is you can create a certain persona on, let's say, like Instagram. With my posts, it's all pictures, it's whatever. I can create a very specific image of what I want the world to perceive me as. However, with a podcast, when we're sitting down like this and we're having a conversation for an hour, your true self, your true beliefs, you might be able to hide them for like 20 minutes, but at some point,
you can't really hide it, no.
It's gonna come out. So I wanted to ask you, what does it mean when you say to be authentic? We get told that be authentic all the time. Everyone tells us that. But I don't think we still understand truly what that means. And then really part two is, okay, I should be authentic. How do I do that?
It's an interesting question, and it's also a question that doesn't have a direct answer, I believe. And I'll tell you why I think so. Because as human beings, this I know for sure because I've read about it and I like psychology a lot. But we as human beings, we define ourselves through different social roles.
True.
Apparently.
True.
Like I define myself now as a podcaster, a colleague of somebody who's also in the media business, right? So I have that part of me that needs to talk to you, Khaled, about media, probably using the same language. Or say, if I'm talking about podcasting with somebody, let's say, who has nothing to do with podcasting, it's probably going to be a different conversation because I would know that person has a different superpower and probably a different role in their life. And I will define myself like probably a coach or something like that. Mm-hmm. Here, I'm defining myself as a colleague, as part of the community, but also belonging to media business at some point. Now, where are you authentic then? Where is the authenticity? Because then I will come to my kids, let's say, and I will define myself as the mother, right? As somebody who is, teaching, taking care of them, curing them, bringing them to the doctor, the first person in line and in life, right? So, and I'm also authentic there, right? And then I'll probably come to a client who wants some marketing content. And I will need to do a certain line of services for them, right? We need to record something, we need to edit something. And I will define myself as somebody who is trying to deliver the best service as a service provider, right? And I will need to have certain skills and qualities and traits to be able to be the best at that part. So where are you authentic?
That's a great question.
Right? So I think authenticity is when in each and every role, first of all, you accept that role legally. Like you I'm legally accepting that, okay, so me and Khaled, we're talking media, we're talking marketing, we're talking podcasting today, and this is what I know about that. And I'm going to share it openly. I might not know everything. I might feel very vulnerable at some point, right? And Khaled will tell me something else, but just the truthful way for us to connect, right? And I'm being purely authentic. I'm not somebody else here, right? I'm not trying to pretend deeper or more shallow than I potentially could be, right?
True.
So that's how I define authenticity. And it's also like everyone, when we go out there in the public, all of us, we do have a right to keep the certain boundaries. You need to have a right to talk and to open up until a certain extent and until a certain degree. That's your pure right.
So happy you brought up that last part, because so just to give you some context, and I mentioned this on a podcast recently, being authentic to me comes with vulnerability. I don't think you can be authentic without being vulnerable, but like you said, to a certain point. Now, a couple of years back, I thought vulnerability was I have to share everything with everyone, but clearly I learned, through time, that's not the case. But you said something really interesting, Lara, about the context, because in different situations, you're not changing yourself, but you're applying a different strategy or approach or the way you speak given that context. So listening to you, I was starting to reflect. I'm like, okay, if we're different in all of those scenarios and we're acting, let's say, differently, authenticity then, I believe, would love to hear your thoughts, I think it's an internal thing, because I think we all know when we're not being authentic, because you get that, like, I don't know, it's knots in your stomach, or you'll reflect on it later, you'll be like, yeah, that wasn't really me, So I think it's an internal thing. And one thing I started to think about, I'm happy you brought up AI, because now, honestly, with certain things, it's getting hard to differentiate, is this even besides authentic, is this a person or not a person? So I guess, where do we start to, and how can I judge a piece of content now? Like, could you look at a piece of content and be like, that guy is being authentic, or he or she's being authentic or inauthentic? Do you think you'd be able to do that? And if you could, how would you analyze it? Because that's an interesting part.
I would say if it resonates from several perspectives. So first of all, when we look at other people, so they either resonate with us or not, from appearance point of view, from the voice point of view, from accents point of view, and from the topic that they engages in. Like some certain content you would definitely ignore because it doesn't resonate from all these perspectives. And I would probably watch something. I would probably watch something that you would never watch, right? So I do not really analyze the content straight away from the perspective whether the host or somebody who has created this piece of content is authentic or not. I probably analyze it from the perspective that, okay, I am consuming it because it resonates with me so much. And then that's probably after the several episodes, I'm like, okay, I'm still here. Why am I still here? Because, and I have an example. I'm watching one of the bloggers, like vloggers, psychologists, like therapists. I will not mention the name to you so that I don't confuse, because it's in a different language as well. And she's got a huge audience, and she did a massive success. She achieved a massive success in terms of how she grew her audience, but her content is a bit hyped, right? So meaning like she can cross a little bit of the boundaries in terms of formats that she's putting in there. But guess what? People consume it because it's exciting, it's interesting, it's a show, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Then you ask yourself a question whether I'm ready to go with this format for this audience, or I'll stay true to what is natural for me right now at this stage, or if I'm going into a bigger game of monetization and I need my advertisers to be always attracted to my show, maybe I should look for the techniques that will help me to do so. Mm-hmm. So the question of authenticity is mainly about do not hesitate, right? Do not hesitate about your actions, your choices at that particular time. If you hesitate, then I think it's the question to you is like, if you're hesitating, maybe there's something that goes against your principle, against your choices. You're just trying to be somebody else but too early. Okay, maybe later on the later stage, when you're already more confident, you suddenly feel, okay, I can use this technique, I can use this, or I can replicate it, and I will bring it through my own interpretation, and it's going to be mine, right? But I do feel natural with this, right? And then it sounds, I think, pretty organic. So in my opinion, authenticity is something that goes organic with you.
Organic.
Yeah.
And I love what you said there about hesitation. I think that is a very good metric to judge for yourself whether you feel like you're being authentic or not. Because like you said, we always, especially in this field, there's always going to come a certain process of how things are done or what's working most successfully, whether it's thumbnails, whether it's the titles, whether it's the music, the production. So in any media space, standing out is very important. And I think the authenticity on how you judge it, I like what you also said, that there's a time for it. There's a time that you will learn if you are or you're not. And how can you, once you've built yourself confidently and organically, then you can maybe start picking and choosing techniques, not personalities from other people, and bringing that into your show. So you've been in marketing you have 12 years of B2B marketing experience. So I just read a book, and you have to read this book, by the way. I think you would absolutely love it, by Gary Vee, called Day Trading Attention. And it was like a crash course in marketing and social media. And I just finished the book.
He's a guru, this guy, definitely. Yeah.
I just finished the book, and I was so overwhelmed because the depth that he went into. I honestly underestimated the complexity of social media and the different, you mentioned formats and the content and the audience. And I finished that book, I was like, I got a lot of work to do. But coming on to what I wanted to ask you, which is, when you talk about B2B marketing, how is that different from B2C marketing?
I think it's more about, if we jump into a marketing conversation from that perspective, B2C marketing is mainly, let's say, it's intended to have an impact on the consumer straight away, right?
Okay.
So let's say you need to think about the campaigns that will make the experience around the product or around the brand to the extent that the consumer and the touch points are very close to the consumer, right?
Okay.
In a B2B marketing, so we're in a bit different sales cycle, let's say. So, and we're supporting a longer sales cycle and probably a bit different product types, right? So we need to take into consideration that marketing has to have an impact on a number of people and on a different level, let's say. So it has to have loyalty, credibility, probably thought leadership, expertise, all these kind of categories that need to be associated with a certain brand or a product before, let's say, your client or potential client will engage with your brand. So, frankly speaking, as the world evolves, the B2C and the B2B are no longer that relevant, right? So we need to make sure that we are marketing to a consumer regardless, because eventually the decisions are made by humans, just on different subjects, right? So it's all about the subject or the topic of the conversation that you are putting there through the marketing and the story that you're trying to deliver through marketing campaigns. Plus, I think in the current years, we're using B2B, just specifically, probably, it's like a little code showing that I'm not selling cosmetics, I'm not selling, let's say, chocolate, but we're dealing, let's say, with softwares, we're dealing with, some infrastructure products or, fintech solutions, things that are not that easily sold through, let's say, online channels, or you cannot come and touch them straight away, right? So you need to know, you need to understand why, you need to understand the problem, and see where the solution fits in. So it's a code.
Yeah.
Yeah, but marketing should not be too different. That's my point.
Okay. No, that's it's very interesting that you say that. That's the first time someone's actually put it to me in that way of not separating the two, because I think you made an interesting point that at the end of the day, it is, again, it's a human. At the other side of what I'm trying to do is sell to a human. Now there's, like you said, different sectors, different types of products. I think another interesting point you talked about was the sales cycle and the timeline of with a consumer, which I didn't really take into consideration, was, you know, I'm trying to sell you this product, so you buy it now. But with, like, let's say a service or like an infrastructure project, I'm going to need to build that trust with you, show you why I'm the right person. So that's going to be, you know, maybe a 3 to 6 month cycle as well. Now, I know you're also in partnerships, and partnerships is an area that I haven't really touched upon, because I have so many questions when it comes to that. Like, how do I select the right partner? What are the keys to a fruitful, you know, partner relationship? So given your experience, if I came to him like, Lara, I'm looking for partners now, what advice are you going to give me? Where do I start?
Well, it depends on what niche. I mean, I manage actually throughout my career and throughout my sort of active career in Dubai. If we're not talking if we're not taking the, let's say, the corporate world, and when you did this as a job, if we're talking about like a normal, for example, my partnership with Poster and Vook, right? It's all, I mean, the networking that I constantly do. I mean, the reason I'm moving in, you know, in the space of service marketing, content, as well as podcasting, is because networking is the skill that naturally belongs to me, and I'm always using that. And to be able to get, you know, a proper partnership, you need to network like 5-10 times more, because you network, you talk to people, you understand what you have, what they have in their context, and you immediately start saying if there's any synergy between this, even a small one, right? And I was interviewing someone back in the days, I think it was like probably a couple of years ago, and he said something very important. He said that so the partnerships, or, you know, the networking is about whether you are ready to take it forward, and in what particular format you're ready to. So, for example, you connected with someone, you introduced yourself, you managed to have this first conversation, and how do you take it forward? So whether there's a synergy and you try the synergy, or you can ignore, you cannot take any steps, right? It's all about how you use that skill of networking and what it can bring you to. But it also, you can kind of feel like if this is the person. I always give it a try. Frankly, if there's an opportunity to take at least one more step forward, I would always do it. And then we see what happens. Yeah. Because usually from the second step, you understand whether there's a way forward for this project. And if it stops, it stops, right? I mean, as long as you're not investing straight away.
Yeah.
It can bring you some value.
Yeah, no, I love that, honestly. I really like that approach, to be open to collaboration, to test it out. I think you will gain more by taking that next step than if you didn't take that next step at all. So I 100% support that, and that's really, really great advice. I'm probably going to take that on myself too. So thank you for that. Now, transitioning on to the podcasting conversation. So I listened to your episode with Duap, and you guys really touched on a lot of points that I have questions about, even being in the space that, when dealing with partners or clients, the hesitation, the challenges. One of the things that still, and you guys touched on it briefly in that podcast, was people are still measuring podcast success through a traditional lens. And as you guys spoke on the podcast that, yes, let's not lie, the numbers are relevant, but they're not everything. For example, I tell people, don't just measure it by how many listens you got on the podcast. Measure it by how good was the conversation you have. How good is this connection or relationship that you've now built the caliber of the guests that you've brought on your show, and what doors has that opened for you? Because just speaking from my experience, the networking, and like you touched on, that I've gotten from doing this, it's a free networking tool, and you get to be selective and pick. But coming back to the measuring of a success of a show, what are your thoughts on that? Because I think there needs to be new metrics to truly analyze this podcasting space.
And I do understand. This is like one of the most popular questions, right? There are standard answers, and we can all Google them. We can find them. Like, how do you measure the effectiveness of a podcast episode or a podcast show? You can chat GPT that, and the chat GPT will actually find you numerous answers to that. And you can Google that. In my opinion, this is purely my point of view.
Yeah.
First of all, when it comes to a B2B podcast, let's say there's a client who are doing a podcast for them and you are acting as a producer. I mean, to be able to budget that show towards certain activities, or to be able to even, take it as a marketing activity or the media or a PR activity, you need to attribute it to a certain metric.
True.
And that's where the vanity metrics come into picture. I call them vanity because, considering how difficult, how tough it is for a company, for a brand to throw a show and record 10, 15 episodes, because it involves a lot of internal approvals. It involves, multiple different schedules. I always call it's like a little startup within the corporate environment. Just to throw a separate B2B podcast show is really, really not that simple.
Yeah.
And they do need to start measuring straight away, and that's the difficult part. But that's the reality. That's the rules of the game, right? So you need to be able to attribute it to certain metrics. And I always recommend in this case to go away from something that we call listenership viewship. Because even if you take, let's say, for the podcasting platform, where you, for example, where you measure the number of downloads, right? There could be one download, but let's say 10 listeners eventually, right? So what's right or wrong, right? Mm-hmm. One download will not make you look very impressive, but 10 listeners behind that, it's a pretty good thing compared to, let's say, an event. Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. Where to be able to get the 10 listeners at once is a big deal. So we need to think about this way. What I am also recommending for the B2B podcast measurements, I recommend to take into consideration things like what are you getting on platforms like LinkedIn. When you're repurposing your content in a correct way, in a strategic way, you can actually get not only a podcasting audience expanded, but you're getting a lot of small projects, opportunities, introductions, referrals, word of mouth, credibility, uplifting the personal branding. How can you ignore that? And what is the other way that will allow you so organically to address all this? So, and from that perspective, okay, so what do we need to do? What do I need to do to support my client to measure it this way? Whether it is the number of impressions on LinkedIn, okay, let's collect that one. Whether it is, the number of people who sort of send a direct message, let's do that. But when it comes to the actual recording, and if, the participants of that particular show, let's say, and you're talking to a partner or a client, and that is the actual attribution, right?
Yeah.
Where else you can do that easily? It's just that you're recording it on camera and it feels like you're doing, but it's not the old way to produce content. It's the whole lot more, right? That's the measurement. That's my point of view, that yes, we need the numbers. Thank you for the podcasting and for the YouTube to giving us those numbers. We need to take them through a context, but it's good to have them, right?
No, absolutely. I love that you said take them through a context, because depending on what lens we're analyzing these numbers from is going to give us two completely different conclusions and thoughts and feelings about how well we're doing. The LinkedIn part you talked about is actually quite interesting. So I think LinkedIn, for me personally, I think it would be similar for you. It's been my strongest platform in terms of business opportunities, guests, we connected, besides,
Networking, yes,
networking,
partnerships, everything.
So I've been posting on LinkedIn for years about my podcast. People might be sick of it by now, but it's not going to change. I'm still going. LinkedIn is an area I'm really starting to pay attention to, especially on the podcasting side, because now, because you touched on it earlier with it's really pushing video now. So almost like a synergy
Instagram
waiting to happen, for us.
I opened LinkedIn the other day and I'm like, oh my God, it looks like Instagram now.
Right?
Because,
yeah, exactly. No, it's so true.
Caption meaning the post itself was the strongest point before. And I'm like, okay, now it looks like an Instagram. So you've got a video and you've got like a real opportunity to click on the caption and to read it. So algorithm change, but it looks like video is a big deal everywhere now.
No, absolutely. And just to round off the metric part of our conversation, another point that we have to take into consideration is managing B2B podcast expectations. Or imagine if you're launching a podcast, to manage your expectations. I think people, and this is where the traditional lens is still a challenge, because if you launch a campaign, you can get millions of impressions, you can get lots of clicks, whatever, all that stuff. So it's very tangible to judge, did this work, did it not work? Now with a podcast, which is much more organic, much more a longer format, it's not like just it's not like just getting a follow on Instagram. You're listening to you're investing time into this. The value of that is much higher, but it takes a lot longer to build. Podcasting, I was thinking about it today, it's almost like SEO in a way. This is a long-term play. It doesn't mean you won't reap benefits as you go along, but to really hit that ding, 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 that game-changing mark is going to take some time.
You tell me, what is that? Because how many episodes does a podcast show need to record or get into to be able to understand, we're going to make it, we're not going to give up, because guess what? I think I found my niche and I found my conversation and I found my audience. So do you have any sort of feeling, experience with that?
Sure.
Do you have any statistics at the end of the day that will help you to judge? So now I'm a host.
There you go. No, but this is good. I love speaking to hosts because it's like a conversation. So I don't have statistics. I can just reflect on my show and my client shows and see what's happened there. Number one factor to be successful, I believe, besides you have to obviously do the strategy, the execution, the production, all that is a part of it. But consistency is so important. You need to show up, whether it's once a month, twice a month, weekly. You need to show up every time for your audience. That's how they start to build trust and start to listen to you. To know that every first of the month, Lara's podcast is coming out and I can't wait to be there, to listen to it. So me as the podcast producer or the show host, I have to make sure I'm there. That's how you start building a loyal, trusting audience. That's step one, consistency. And then it's about, as you go on, refining your messaging, refining the types of guests you bring on the show, the conversations you have. It does take time. So let's say if you start, I always recommend start with whatever time frame you're comfortable with to produce, because it takes a lot of work, as you know, to put shows out consistently. And people don't have the resources or the time to keep doing that week in, week out. So I always say once a month, I think everyone has time to record 1 hour a month and then do the rest of the post-production process. So if you say once a month for a year, that's how I would start. And then at the end of the year, you can judge. Maybe you run it again for another year to get the full feedback, but you're going to hit a point. Like now with some of my clients, we're hitting a point that I'm like, okay, we've run it for this way consistently. We have a decent audience now. Now it's about volume. Now it's about ramping up on what we have built. So I would say start slow, because if I start with a weekly show, I have to be there every week. My first year, I did 52 weeks in a row, my first year. But then the next 2 years, honestly, it was in and out, sometimes 3 weeks, sometimes months, life gets in the way. So you really need to commit. So find something that you can commit to. Now I'm back to, weekly, but I remember how much work it is, and that anxiety, I feel like, a rat running a race, the finish line just keeps getting closer every week. But that would be my thoughts. What do you think, given your experience?
It's first of all, it's an ever evolving problem, but I keep on hearing about the consistency, right? I thought the secret was in the in the special format, or the secret was in the hype that you can create about the topic. Then I thought the secret is in in the guest. But then, I mean, the secret is in all of these
Of course,
elements.
absolutely.
But everybody keeps on saying is the consistency that helps. And I think what you also gain, if we talk about the personal growth, when you become consistent, when you take it as a job, and when your stakes are high in terms of what you want to achieve, you take it same as you hiring yourself for your own show. Eventually, it fine-tunes the conversation too, right? It fine-tunes your niche. It brings in suddenly your authentic self that is defined through this particular, content. So you find your voice.
Yeah.
But it happens because you stay consistent and you're like, okay, I'm going to give it another try. I'm going to give it another try today, tomorrow, next week. And not only with recording, because I think there's also like there's also something that people might forget. One thing is recording content. Another thing is how you edit that content and how you upload it on YouTube and how you promote that as well.
Absolutely.
So we should not forget that part too.
Exactly. And I'm so happy you brought that up because and I've said this many times, that has been my Achilles heel throughout my podcasting journey. I was of the mindset for the first, I think, 3 years that all I need to do is be consistent, keep putting out content. And I'm putting out content in the sense that just put out the episode that on the day it's released, and that should be enough. But I completely neglected the marketing and distribution side of the equation because that is just as, if not, could be even more important sometimes, because that's the engine that's going to keep pushing people back to your show. And that has to be, you need a whole content calendar and plan for that. That's what I do now for my show and for my clients as well. So like you said, there's the recording side, there's the editing, and then there's the post-production. And then the quality now of the post-production is something you have to look at too. It's not just enough to do, small cuts. Now, a lot of people, there's B-rolls, there's, the quick swipes, you have to find that engaging part of the conversation. There's a whole new science of where you need to compete now, that's my next, the next area I'm trying to get into. Because I do everything myself. So I'm the editor, I'm the producer, I'm the researcher, I'm the host, I'm everything. So
what's your favorite part in podcasting then?
What we're doing right now.
Right.
I live for this, Lara. This is my favorite. If you tell me, Khaled, you have to do this every day for the rest of your life, that's the dream. That's what I'm trying to work towards.
How did you find that passion, though?
I've always liked speaking to people, honestly, and over the years, I've had deep conversations with like friends and so on. And then when I was living in Amsterdam, I really got into podcasts, and they changed my life, honestly. Which is why I'm doing my show. I hope through my learning and my curiosity that I'm providing education and learning for other people to have that aha moment that I had. And if I'm doing that, I couldn't be more fulfilled than that. So, I just love speaking to people. I think you learn the most speaking to people. I
think it's just that we're lucky to be probably in the niche that is just sort of, first of all, it's nicely and strategically positioned, and the world is evolving. It requires more content. It requires people who like and enjoy that, because guess what? There are other people who enjoy different things, and they would probably feel so uncomfortable to sit and talk in front. But since this industry is also giving you an opportunity to monetize what you're recording, that gives us an opportunity to actually call it a job, right? Because true. Other than that, it will not be taken seriously as much as it should be, because it's a heavy lift.
Of course.
All in all, right?
Of course, yeah. And I think you touched on it just now about being passionate about it. And this is when I think you might have experienced this in your conversations when it comes to B2B podcasts. And a lot of people say like, yeah, Khaled, we want a podcast. But once I ask why, there's no reason there. It's just that everyone's doing it. This is the thing to do, but they don't understand. They don't whatever. So when I'm working with a client or about to work with a client, I'm like, listen, this is a long-term thing, and if you don't want to take it seriously, then I don't want to be the person to don't waste your money, because that's not the people I want to be working with. I want to work with people who understand the value, who have the same passion for it, and are willing to work together to put in the work to build the show, because it is a heavy lift, like you said.
I feel like a lot of people nowadays just are fascinated about the experience that they might get, and after a few episodes they definitely lose the interest, because as much as it seems to be like, okay, I'm on a show, I'm on a B2C, so it has become so accessible to many people in terms of like, you've got your cameras, you've got your mics, right, you've got a conversation, you've got a script, whatever, and it seems to be like accessible. It was not like that before. Previously, take a decade ago, who would have thought sitting in a studio would be that accessible?
True.
No,
Absolutely, yeah.
no. And nowadays, anyone can come and share their story to a host or record themselves. But then, how do you show up every week?
Exactly.
How do you do that every week?
Yeah.
And what if you don't have an inspiration? What if you do not have mood anymore, but you still need to show up? Keep the authenticity. Yeah? So it's like, this is something, that one requires, I think, definitely a special, I think the way you treat this activity as a job, and that's the attitude. And not everybody can do that.
No, for sure. And like you said on the point that now the biggest challenge was always for people to get into podcasting was the production, was the editing, the technical side, because that's the area that would stop a lot of people. So now a lot have come in, and me and Vuk were actually talking about this, and he was saying that it's going to come down to the content itself. How good is the conversation? Are you asking the right questions? Are you delivering value, to your audience? And because it does take a lot of work, there was a statistic I read, I think 90% of podcasts don't make it past like 4 or 5 episodes or something like that.
10, I think, yeah. There's a statistics about 10 for sure. But then a lot stop at 50, which is very sad, isn't it?
It is.
50 is a big deal.
Yeah, that is a big, if you did 50,
Yeah.
I would, I would be continuing, but I guess everyone's different. And I think you need to have a passion for it. To keep going and to keep doing it, you need to love this part, the hosting part. At least that's my perspective. So that's why I wanted to ask you. So I host, obviously, this show, and I host the American University in Dubai show. And you have the Veela Podcast, and you also have the C-Suite Influence Podcast. Now, this is something I think about, and that's why I like speaking to other hosts. And especially, I haven't spoken to many hosts who host multiple shows like I do. So we're having a conversation now in a certain way now, and we just kind of talks about the authenticity that we were talking about earlier. Now, when I'm doing that show, it's a much more professional show, just like with you and C-Suite Influence. So I'm still myself, but I'm a lot more measured. I'm a lot more maybe structured. I don't jump around as much as I do in my show. So I'm curious to hear your experience when you're hosting the different shows. Do you feel that adjustment or struggle as well?
For the C-suite, I think that part of corporate me came into place the moment I hosted the first episode for C-suite. I felt like I've got this. I've got this. I understand what needs to be here, but the real joy and the real sort of vibe that I felt of how it should look and what's being created there, I felt probably after the 5th episode or something. That's when I felt like, okay, yeah, now I get it. I get it why I enjoy it so much, because there's this B2B part of me, corporate part of me, that actually was not used because I'm in my own business now. Well, it is used, but I mean, I call myself an entrepreneur, right? And whoever, but that corporate part of me still missed the job, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think I found myself in that one, right? And talking to the executives when they come on the show, and I have an opportunity to ask them, for once, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all the questions,
about the things that motivated them. And to me, that was the enjoyment. I was like, okay, and I can learn. I can also learn, and it's also on the regional level. So that's how I came to that, and it's a very, very natural conversation for me. But we definitely script, not to the extent that we script the answers, but at least we know the questions and we also know the questions that are going to work well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And we throw those questions, and when you hear it from different leaders, I think that's why it works well. And also, I think the repurposing part plays a big
Massive.
role. So it's just a really great content for LinkedIn.
No,
Yeah.
100%. And you mentioned something there which I'm curious about on the scripting part. So for example, as you see, like I have my questions here, but a lot of the conversation we've had has not been question related. It's just my guideline, and I build the conversation accordingly. So because I'm just trying to relate it to like my process. When you're doing research for whether it's your show or the C-suite show, does it change that process for you? Like even the questions that you're kind of coming up with, or it feels quite natural whether you're doing it for your show or for the C-suite one?
Different. Frankly, it's a little different because
Okay.
we have a certain conversation that we need to maintain in a C-suite, and it has to be around leadership, executive, lessons, etc. And I like that part. So because it's under focus, and I don't think there's enough leadership content on the local level. We do have the global one, like the Diary of the CEOs.
Of course.
And if you Google, for example, or if you look for in YouTube, you probably will find a lot of people talking about leadership. But on the regional level, there's not too much. So we want to keep it in the frames of the leadership. When it comes to interviews that I'm doing for Veela or for the True Value, or maybe there will be another day, more
Stay
personal. For that one, I can I use it to explore.
Okay,
Explore
I
the
get you.
stories, the backgrounds, and explore also how the conversation is going. But I'm also keeping it, once I feel like there's something in this particular story or this person, they can work as a great content on LinkedIn, I keep on digging into that particular part.
Gotcha.
So yeah, it gives me freedom to explore, but the C-suite, I enjoy the fact that we're keeping it within a certain frame.
Sure. I relate to that a lot actually. My process I think is the same whether I do it for like our show today or for that. But like you said, obviously in that more professional environment, it is more narrow and focused on this particular topic or idea or learning or whatever, the umbrella of or message that we're trying to give out with that show is. So no, I 100% agree with you on that. Lara, I just want to be conscious of our time, so I just have two last questions for you that I ask all my guests. So first of all, if I'm asking you, looking back at your life, whether personally or professionally, when I ask you the question, what are you most proud of for yourself, what would you say?
I think that the way I can adopt things, like, jumping from a corporate career to what I'm doing now was a rough jump for me.
I'm sure.
It was a long journey. It was a lot of learnings. It was a lot of realization in terms of how hands-on you have to be when you're out of the corporate job. And that was probably the most sort of sincere learning that I've realized, that especially in Dubai, you have to be really hands-on. But also I'm proud of the fact that I do understand the bigger picture, which is great. It gives me a lot of, opportunity to go into deep conversations with executives now or find brilliant partners. So that gives me an opportunity to look at things 360 degree probably.
No, 100%. I really resonate with what you just said, leaving, my corporate background or the startups I worked at when I was now being alone, just like you. It's been a road, like for sure. I was so, Lara, I don't know about you, but I was so naive, honestly. Like I knew it was going to be hard. Everyone says entrepreneurship is hard, but I thought as a solopreneur, since I don't at the moment have, salaries and politics and clients, that would be a lot easier. It's not the case at all, because I've learned that I've appreciated now the power of having a team around you and people around you. I have partners that I'll bring in for certain things, but at the end of the day, it is just me. And whether you have a good day or a bad day, whether you're successful, whether you're not, you have to look in the mirror and be like, yeah, it's your fault. There's nowhere else to look. So I really, really resonate with what you're saying.
Oh, good. Yeah, I'm happy we found something that, it's a value for you and for me, right?
No, absolutely. Yeah. And for my last question, Lara, what is the message you'd like everyone to take home with them today?
Please give... take the time to listen to the episodes that I recorded, especially this year, because I was lucky to invite some of the really, really amazing speakers and guests with lots of value to share. So I appreciate any type of feedback and anything that you want me to do better or worse or probably different in the episodes that I record. And yeah, let's stay connected.
Lara, thank you so much for coming on the show, guys. Make sure to check out her podcast. We'll put it in the show notes, Veela Podcast. She's really spoken to some amazing guests, super interesting. I saw you recently had Mimi Nicklin, who I had on my show years ago. And
really? Yeah.
So it's funny when you're a podcaster and you go through other people's podcasts. You're like, oh, I've spoken to him too, and I've spoken to him too. So there's a lot of people that we've spoken to at the same time, just at different times and so on. But guys, it's a great show. Lara has a really unique way of asking questions and delivering value, which I really appreciate as a podcast host. I know how difficult the hosting side is, so I appreciate people who do it well. So congratulations on that. 50 is massive. And cheers to the next 50. And yeah, thank you so much for coming, Lara.
This is a great studio, by the way. First time in my life I'm recording in a home studio, and I am learning, Khaled. So thank you for inviting. I'm learning. This is a nice soundproof wall, and we've got cameras here, and the lights, and the mics. So
yeah. And guys,
great
any questions?
job.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Guys, to everyone listening, thank you so much. Please make sure to like, share, follow, and subscribe to the podcast. I hope it helps pod on all channels. And as always, guys, hope it helps. Peace. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Yeah.
And that's another episode in the bag, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really, really appreciate it. All I'm trying to do is give back with this podcast. So if you walked away from this episode having learned something new, gained a new perspective, or you simply just enjoyed the episode, that means I've done my job. If you could please do me the small favor of hitting that subscribe button, it would really mean the world to me and would help me build the show and build the channel. And that's all I ask. Stay tuned for a lot more conversations, new topics, more exciting guests. But until then, and until next time, guys, hope it helps. Peace.